Welcome to the Pressure Beast Podcast.
Some call it overbuilt. We call it foreplay.
All right, Beasters, we're back with another Code Help edition. Today we're going to talk about UG99.
Might get a little wet on this one.
No, we are.
Hydro test.
Yes.
The final certification of the vessel.
The baptism of the baby.
Prove what you did is good.
Right.
So yeah, just going to hit a couple of high points, low points on hydro test. There's a lot of things that shops do out there, frankly, that are just outright dangerous.
Never be done.
Never be done. So first off, let me just iterate that hydro tests are dangerous. Do not hire the least experienced, lowest paid person in the shop to go do hydro test. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to get someone hurt, or they're going to get themselves hurt. Quite a few shops I've been around, been in, and all that someone has gotten hurt, died, whatever the case may be, because of hydro test.
And no SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. Right. They're just kind of fill them up, blast them with some pressure, and then hope the gauge is good.
Right.
So yeah, get organized and get your ducks in a row when it comes to hydro testing. So
yeah,
what's give me something you
hot
see a
bolting,
lot.
man.
Oh yes,
hot bolting. I absolutely cannot stand. So for those that don't know, hot bolting is either skipping every other bolt and not putting them all in there. Sometimes some shops try to put like 4 bolts in a manway, something of that nature. So if you're not putting all the bolts in the bolt holes for every blind, there's an issue there. It's dangerous. Gaskets aren't made for that.
No, and to go one step further with hot bolting, you guys, most of these shops, most of your guys, if you go look at your shop, right, you got a standard set of blinds, a standard set of bolts, and a standard set of gaskets that are used repetitively, right? Mm-hmm. Well, those bolts get stretched over time, and they get weakened, and the gaskets get crushed, and you're just really setting up a recipe for, an unfortunate event, right? So on top of the bolting being stretched over time in years, in some cases, and the gaskets being crushed and, lack of reusability, hot bolting just kind of exasperates the whole situation. And when one of those things lets loose, you don't want anyone to be near or around it.
Yeah.
And gauge is on top.
Gauge is on top. That's and it's a little misconception on this. As long as your gauge is hooked up to the top of the vessel,
right, the
gauge itself doesn't need to be on top.
That's the hose.
But
put a couple valves in the middle of that, right?
Yeah, no put no valves in there.
No.
I guess there's a bunch of old shops that used to trick the AIs and not actually pressurize the thing and just put a pressurized gauge on there and be like, here we go.
Or shut a valve.
Shut a valve, yeah.
It's not leaking. Didn't drop pressure.
Code requires that no valves be in between the gauge and the vessel itself. You can put a hose, but not a valve.
And if you're going to daisy chain them together, the valve needs to be on the vessel opposite end of the pump coming in, right? So if you have vessels that are all chained together and your pump's coming in over here, well, the gauge should be over here.
And not supposed to have valves between them.
No.
What else?
I never had an issue with the valves, but
I don't. I don't have an issue with the valves.
So one of the things you should be doing, which is difficult to do in some hydro tests, but if you have a valve that allows for this to happen, especially a little bleed valve, is zeroing out the gauge after the hydro test, right? It's important to zero out the gauge. One, if your gauge does not come back to zero and rest where it should be at zero, then you might have a defective gauge, right? So that's not something you really want to experience after a large fill, excuse me, or you just put 2 gauges on the vessel, which would help eliminate some of that issue.
Some of it, yeah. But
I'm always a fan of 2 gauges personally.
I like 2 gauges, and I personally like the gauges on the valves just so you can zero them out.
Yeah.
The amount of third-party inspectors that they come out and have to wait for the AI, or vice versa, the AI has to wait for a third-party inspector because they both need to see the gauge zeroed out after hydro. Yeah. And it kind of a pain in the ass.
But you're not supposed to have a valve.
What about chart recorders? Those required?
Ooh, I love them. No, they're not required, unfortunately, but they're handy tools and a great instrument to demonstrate a hydro test has been done. Because realistically, without a chart recorder of some sort, a shop really has no physical document proof other than maybe a sign-off sheet. But again, that a hydro test was done.
Right.
Right. It's all word of mouth until you get that chart. So no, they're not required. Is it a good practice? Absolutely.
Word of advice, all the digital gauges now, and with digital gauges, it helps you out a little bit. You have to have less gauges. So your gauge range at 1.5 to 4 times test pressure doesn't apply to digital. With the caveat of the digital gauge should be calibrated in the same ranges as every gauge that it's replacing. So if it's, a quarter, half, 3/4 of the pressure, and you have a 5,000 pound gauge, you're using it for 100 PSI hydro. You also want it calibrated for 25, 50, 75, 100. So you're replacing every gauge that you replaced, get that digital gauge calibrated to that range that it would get. But most of the digital gauges now have chart recorders associated with them.
I didn't know that.
They're nice. But and they're Bluetooth, man. You can be across the shop and look at your phone and see the pressure and everything. But I will warn you with the digital gauges. So a lot of times they'll go to sleep. You got to press the button, wake them back up. If you do that, be careful. A lot of the gauges, if you don't have them locked, you can reset the pressure, recalibrate it to 0 after it's pressurized. I've been involved in a couple cases where that happened.
Really?
And tank fully pressurized, someone ends up recalibrating it to 0. They go repressurize it again on top of the pressure they already had on it. And not a pretty sight, but be careful with the digital gauges, man. Just make sure you get them locked, that you can't go changing a bunch of shit while it's on hydro.
Under pressure. Right. And as you know, the foundation of that is make sure your gauges are calibrated, right? Make sure they're within the range. Now, most people think gauge calibration is set by the code. It's not. It's actually set by the manufacturer. So if you got a 1 year span between your gauge calibrations and you're doing multiple hydros on a regular basis, man, get those things calibrated every 6 months or every 4 months or something, Don't wait for at the end of the year, because what happens is if you do have a bad gauge, what you're supposed to do is go back and find every vessel that was hydro tested with that gauge and then modify accordingly.
And if you do want to have that longer time span of calibration, make sure you use 2 gauges. One of them's off, then one of them's off, and then you check them both and figure out which one it is. So you're not running into, hey, we hydro 10 vessels and found out that this gauge is off. And
what's your opinion on overpressurizing? Like, say, for instance, the hydro test is supposed to be 250 going to 275.
On a standard hydro, nothing extreme, not a issue at all, right? If we're talking about 10, 15, 20 pounds, if you're talking about hundreds of pounds, something of that nature, then you should probably run some calculations to make sure you're not overstressing it. And unfortunately, I don't know why code really doesn't address that. They say you can overpressurize it as much as you want, as long as there's not permanent deformation. If there is, then the AI gets to reject the vessel.
Right.
There should really be a limit on. They do it for bolting, 90% of yields for bolting, but there should be an upper limit on hydros. I think you're detrimentally yielding. They're taking that metal to yield at times
over a certain period. Over a certain point. I agree with going maybe 25 pounds over.
Yeah,
always do. And I had a couple of shops that actually took physical pictures of the gauge, which I think was another great asset to have just in your book. They didn't give them out, but shit, pictures are free nowadays.
So what's your opinion on? So if you get a gauge calibrated, right, and it's 2% out at whatever at 100 pounds, do you have to add that 2% into your hydro?
So the shops down in Mexico were always questioned about that, and they would actually have a hydro test log that addressed that issue of what they went over to adjust for that gauge.
Right.
No. My answer is no. Most of those gauges don't even fluctuate at that low of a pressure. You know what I mean? So, excuse me, unless you got a digital gauge that's really not affordable, because the scale is just not readable at such minute levels.
Right.
That's why I'm a fan of going 15, 20 pounds over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that way, in the event that does come up, it's a non-conversation, because you've already adjusted for any anomalies that might occur for that. But yes, when I was in Mexico, the team leaders would hammer those guys on that situation.
Yeah.
Hammer those guys on that situation.
National board, stateside, they kind of hit and miss on it.
Yeah.
Some guys would hammer on it, and some guys would, it don't matter.
No, those boys down there, they'd get them.
So talking about test pressure, one of the most common findings I ever had on hydros was on stainless vessels. If you don't take the LSR into account, if you're not familiar, LSR is the lowest stress ratio. It's your ratio between your working temperature and the stress values at working temperature and stress values at ambient. And for stainless, anything over just round numbers saying 300 or so, your hydro pressure actually starts going up the higher your temperature gets in order to account for that weakening of the material at higher temperatures. Man, that is missed so often.
Again, you should be factoring in your LSR.
You have
period.
To, yeah.
Most all calculation programs do that anyway nowadays. If you're not using commercial software and you're using someone that has a Excel spreadsheets or something of that nature, man, I'd go check for that. Because you're right. If it's found that that vessel is not hydro tested properly after the fact, there's a few things you can do. You can go back and re-hydro test. You can go back and re-rate the vessel for a lower MAWP to adjust for that hydro test.
Or temperature.
Or temp. And, but anyway, all in all, it's just avoidable. Over-pressurize the vessel. Yeah. Just kidding. Take the hydro pressure a little higher than the vessel's required hydro pressure. It kind of helps offset all that. But yes, LSR is a highly overmissed issue.
Yeah, man, it's very common.
But it'll bite you in the ass.
It will. What else you got hydro-wise?
Most of the accidents I see or I've seen is when you're removing the blinds. I've seen a lot of times where the gentleman thinks the vessel's not under pressure and the vessel's still under pressure. Hence, that would be a great reason why not to put a valve within the system, right between your vessel and the gauge. But yeah, make sure the vessels, you would think that would be a very common sense thing to understand, but man, it's a Friday.
Yep.
It's late. It's payday. Dude's got a hot date and he can't do crap until he, undoes these vessels and gets them drained and moved along their path. And I've seen many, many, many times they'll go take that impact wrench and next thing you know, their impact wrench is busted their hand or in their gut or, destroyed them.
To take it a step further, and it's not only with the completion of the hydro and breaking it down and draining it. When it's on hydro or when you're pressurizing it and you get a leak in a flange or air-cooled exchangers are notorious for the plugs leaking and full pressure guys up there with impact guns just cranking down on them with thousands of pounds of pressure behind that. Don't touch that thing under pressure, man. It's
Drop
not
the pressure, tighten it up, redo it.
Yeah, it is not worth dying or killing someone else to save a couple minutes.
Be safe. Use your head. It'll be good. But what else you got? Anything else? Are we good?
Hydros? Oh, man. Pneumatics are a different conversation. But
yeah, we'll leave that for its own special one because there's that rule that uniquely allows the AI to determine what needs to be MP'd or PT'd.
Right.
Yeah, so, but
yeah, one
of the things is never talked about, never discussed, and maybe that should be its own little video, is a combo, right? So if you look on the data report, it says pneumatic, hydro, or combo, right? So there's a lot of situations where you'll fill this vessel up with water, but to get the pressure up, right, is you slap some shop air in there, right? And that'll help, preferably nitrogen. But anyway, the combination of the air and the water allows for that pressure to be built. In some situations, it's a handy tool. Get with your AI. Most of them will look at you crazy. But yes, there are situations where a combo test makes sense in achieving a pressure you need.
That, or if you just absolutely cannot bleed all the air out because of the configuration, then you have to do half hydro, half
Yeah, that would be
combo. It definitely unique, and the pneumatic test requirements could fall into the area of the vessel that had the gas, the nitrogen, or the air, something of that nature, in it for the pressure test.
Yeah, don't build bombs.
Yeah, no.
That's what a pneumatic is. So, but anyway, be safe out there. We got your back.
All right. See you next time.